Welcome. You are at the CCC,
where there are no outside issues with me. I'm Bonnie Violet. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, identity doula, digital chaplain, person living with HIV in recovery, whose drug of choice were alcohol, meth, and ecstasy.
My name is Anthony. I'm a sixth-year doctoral student in clinical psych. I really like California rolls, although I know they're not like authentic sushi rolls. And I care about you.
and you guessed it, I'm Lulu, and my pronouns are he, him, and mine. And I'm in recovery for alcohol and crystal meth, a former Miss Castro Country Club, and I am always in search of balance.
And each week we will provide and create a brave space where we engage in conversation around topics of recovery.
And our goal is to hold and inspire better spaces for people in recovery.
But before we do that, like, subscribe, comment, ding that bell.
Ding, 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 ding.
Like we say every week, tell your friends about us, tell your enemies about us, your ex-lovers, your current lovers.
Especially if they're our type.
So how is everyone?
I'm good. So Bonnie, I was telling Anthony earlier, I had one of those moments. I was at work and a woman came up to me. I'd never seen her. And she's like, can I ask you a question? And I thought it was a question about work. He says, are you on that, I think she said show or whatever, but for the country club? And I'm all, yes, I'm having a moment where somebody recognizes me with my clothes on. That was really nice.
Great.
Yeah, I said, I'm all, well, make sure you listen. You keep on listening because we're here for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I had a good week. I had a really good week.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Good deal. I had a pretty good week too. I spent the first part of the week with my old sponsee in one part of DC, and now I'm in another part of DC. And just, I haven't been productive in a while, and I feel like I've been getting a lot done.
Nice.
When you say productive, what do you mean?
So like, I feel like a lot of my work in the last little bit has been like more emotional, spiritual, kind of like internal kind of stuff. And so like last week I designed my website and
Nice.
been like redesigned a bunch of merch and, like just kind of that sort of production stuff, my spiritual drag conference, that sort of thing.
Is that the thing you sent us a link to?
What I sent you a link to was the at the CCC information on my website.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It does look really good.
Yeah.
It does look like very nice.
I've already gotten 500 visits to it in less than a week, which is crazy.
Rockstar.
Ooh, you post the nudes or what?
No, that's the whole thing. It's like, no, it's not.
You know what? If it's an OnlyFans, that's okay.
Oh, is it feet pics? Is that what you're doing?
I might have to do something else to, eat.
I feel that. So my week's been pretty good. I've been really busy. This is my power writing week. So literally being on the podcast today is the only thing scheduled outside of my writing that I'm doing this week because I just really like it here.
Is power writing like power bottoming?
No, it's not the same. Well, power writing is just like basically, I know I don't know why I was so defensive about the way you asked that question. I should think about that.
I know. Folks listening, didn't you hear the love in my voice?
Yeah. That's so hard to distinguish from your asshole voice. They're so similar.
Because they're my voice.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Gosh, if the worst memory and everyone knows it. Writing. Yeah. So, thanks. So I've just been mostly writing this week. That's been going really well. What I'm noticing is that maybe not for the first time, but what I'm being reminded of is that I have a saturation point at like 4 hours. After 4 hours, it's like diminished returns. The quality of basically all my thinking and writing is shit. Cool. So shall we?
We shall.
Okay. So today's episode is going to be on romantic and sexual ideals. But listen, before we do that, I have a disclaimer because I know every week we say, we don't speak for any programs. This isn't necessarily like focused on AA. So I went and quickly did some research on like what are the other programs that exist outside of AA. And the reason why I did this is because I'm going to read from the big book, which is clearly from AA, and I just want to kind of reduce whatever bias y'all might think we have. So different recovery programs out there would be like self-management and recovery training. So smart recovery, refuge recovery, Women for Sobriety, Secular Organization of Sobriety, Life Ring Secular Recovery. Then you have like other treatment modalities. So all of that is to say is that, one, we acknowledge that there are other programs out there. And if anyone listening in is from any of those programs, we'd welcome you to participate just like anyone else. And I think the last thing I wanted to say about that is that highlighting that what we do here is like we have these experiences with the programs that we've been in, and that's what we share with you. That's it, is our experience. Okay, now that is said and done. So I went to the big book, and clearly when we talk about sexual and romantic ideals, we think of page what?
69.
That's right, page 69. And so I won't read all of it, but I do want to highlight like the heavy hitters in page 69. So it says, some people cry for sex and more sex. Some people hate the institution of marriage. The word they use is be well, but no one says that shit anymore. Some people think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex. Is that true? I've never met anyone who says all the problems we have in the world are traceable to sex.
No, maybe that's older, because it was probably more kind of puritanical or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they were religious. Like, yeah, that's nonsense.
Yeah. The other thing is some people think we're not having enough sex.
Angel said LAASLAAA.
Oh, I'm in SLAW. I'm in SLAW.
It's love and sex.
Love Addicts Anonymous, and then Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. Thank you, Angel.
Right on.
That's a new name. I haven't seen that name come up. Thanks for writing in. So some people think we don't have enough sex. Some people don't think they're having the right kind of sex. Let's see. They see its significant. Oh, then other people see the significance of sex literally in every part of their life. And then, did y'all know what straight pepper diet meant? I had to look that up today.
I thought every time I read it, I thought it was just like real kind of freaky sex.
Yeah, so it's not
style.
like, it's just kind of like, oh, well, Brandon is shaking his head, so I would love to know what he thinks. But what I read, well, so like in context, it's clear that it's the opposite of like, what is it? No flavor
Bland,
for his
yeah.
fare. Yeah. So
all missionary.
all through a glory hole.
No, just like a sheet in between.
Yeah. Glory hole. That's what straight pepper diet is. It's a glory hole.
Okay. See, I think I was doing that because I was
your most recent experience.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, straight pepper diet is basically like all the sex that you want. Brandon, do you disagree? Brandon says he doesn't disagree. The other thing, and then one of the things I really appreciate about page 69 is that, you know, the text says we don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, neither do we.
But you know, I always say it's like we don't want to be, but somebody should be, which is you.
That's really good.
Yeah,
let's
I'll
put that in the parking lot.
Put it in the parking lot.
Yeah, we'll put it in the parking lot. And then okay, and then the other thing it says is that we all have sex problems. And okay, this is the last bit, which is what basically gets us to the romantic and sexual ideals. So again, in the big book, what we did is we looked at where we were selfish, where we were dishonest or inconsiderate, whom we hurt, you know, when we've unjustifiably aroused jealousy, which makes me think, is there a justifiable arousal of jealousy? I don't know. I'll maybe write in.
It just happens sometimes, I think.
Like justifiable?
Well,
I see what like deliberate versus it just happens. I guess I won't write in. Thank you, Bonnie Violet. It turns out Bonnie Violet's like a big book scholar.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Did we okay, and then suspicion, bitterness, and then we looked at where we were at fault and what we could have done instead. And based on the text, that is supposed to be how we develop our sexual and romantic ideals, at least in AA. So I want to start today by asking about what was the messiest relationship you've ever been in, either before or after recovery, if you feel comfortable sharing. Messiest, and however way you define that.
Okay, so I'll just dive in. I really feel like I've never really been in like a long-term relationships. All of my relationships, they had a 3-month expiration date, like 3 months and a little longer or whatever. And a majority of them were, should I say most of them were in active addiction. And so that was just messy to begin with. And I think that what made it messy is that, like, there wasn't a clear communication of what it was. I mean, there was definitely sex or whatever, and it was revolved around sex. And I think that maybe I or this other individual thought that it was more than what it was, you know. And I mean, that's it. It's like it just wasn't. It wasn't clear. And now, hell, now that I think about it, like the one specific one that I'm thinking of, I don't even think we were really friends. I think it was hell. You know, I honestly, it's like hell when you can't show up for yourself. How do you expect someone else to show up for you?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like it was just, you know, I as far as self-worth goes, it's like I was not coming into the relationship with an idea of a feeling of worthiness. And so
right.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's a good person, but you know, I've been able to make a lot of amends. It's like in staying the hell out away from him.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Bunny Violet, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what comes to mind is my relationship I was in when I got sober. And that relationship was directly after I ended my marriage. And, you know, like, yeah, and I was right at the end of my drinking. So it was like, um, it was just a mess. I was dishonest. I was afraid of failure. I was afraid of what other people would think. I was afraid of being alone. I was afraid of like it was just like all those sorts of things were like dictating, like they were running the show versus me like being conscious aware of like I had intention and how I wanted to show up in the relationship. And I just couldn't, between the physical abuse, the dishonesty, the substances on both of our parts, the, you know, all that sort of stuff. It just, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's what kind of brought me to my knees, so to speak, and really pushed me to like really look at my life and be like, what the heck is going on here, you know?
Yeah. How did you get to that point? The point where you're like, wait, what? Like, what am I doing?
A girl, I mean, it was, you know, like a lot of things. It's like it's a place I've been before, but like somehow I just switch it up. I change the person, or I do something slightly different. And I just kind of, with this particular relationship, and I'm also like an Al-Anon code of, like, I have relationship, you know, stuff I could maybe do, sex and love and all that crap too. And so it was all kind of really it was really kind of intermesh, you know. So I think for me, it was like finally reaching a point where I was like, I can't, like, I just like not knowing how to get different results. You know, like they say,
Yeah.
sick and tired of being like, I had no idea how to get different results in a relationship.
Yeah. Oh my God. So relatable. Oh, I was just going to ask for people to write in. Okay. Elliot writes, I'd say like other situations in our lives, we and quote unquote, I had to learn how to do things differently. I had to learn how to identify the gigantic red waving flags. That is so real, Elliot, versus men I was both interested in beyond their looks. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that's really good. Oh, and we always encourage people to write in. Angel, if you're out there, you're welcome to write in. Again, anyone out there. And I have to keep track of my thoughts. So I forgot. Okay. What I wanted to say, Bonnie Violet. Okay, this is what I was relating to was like the patterns and repeating them. Super relatable. So I think like I was doing that shit before I got sober, and my last relationship, right? So last relationship by far probably the worst relationship I've ever been in my life, and probably because I was sober to experience it, and also because it was just really toxic. But what I noticed in trying to answer that question by myself is that it was what you said. It was like the pattern. It's like, it doesn't matter if I was like sober or not. I was repeating these patterns over and over and over again. I think the most grueling part about that for me was like, I'm in a lot of pain. I don't know why I'm in a lot of pain. I just, you know what I mean? And I was constantly molding, and there was a lot of fear because And like, if I'm myself, you won't love me, blah, 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 blah. CCC sings a really good song about that. I forgot what the name is. But yeah, so my
If you're
thing.
wondering, I hate you. I do.
No, I'll find the title. But yeah, but so I hear that, like the patterns, the fear. My therapist always says, well, she doesn't always say it, but she says, Anthony, when you're bored, because sometimes I get bored with this stuff. She goes, Anthony, when you're bored is usually when you start making the biggest changes. Because, like we see, I think it's in the 12 and 12. It says, pain and great love are our only disciplinarians. Right.
Yeah,
so it's like, I think similarly, it's like, I'm either like inspired through love to make changes, or I'm just in so much pain in order to make changes. And that looks different for everyone else. Awesome.
Would you say that that's something that changes as you get sober?
What you mean?
Would you still say that that's like, I was actually just talking with someone earlier today about this, and it's just like, I've gotten to a point in my life where I really try to get away from like judging myself and labeling things good or bad, or this was a mistake, but becoming more curious about like, why am I choosing to do this? Why am I choosing not to do this? Why am I pulled to do this or that instead? But it's sometimes difficult to kind of know how to move forward because I used to be so propelled by this idea of what's right or wrong or what might get me the result I'm looking for, whatever. And I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my life, but I feel like the more I've been sober and the longer I've lived, what I want is more, and it's more ambiguous. And to get it, who the fuck knows how to? And so part of it is just being able to let go of all that crap and just kind of be with whatever.
Yeah, and it sounds like what you're saying is like, in order to let those things go, you should kind of experience things with curiosity as opposed to like in black and white.
Well, I feel like you can do that now. I mean, it's a combination of doing the work and staying sober, because before we were not doing the work, staying sober, so you didn't have any room to be free and curious and open. I think that because I've cleared away the bullshit, or some of the bullshit, because it's like there's some that'll stick around. I feel like now what you were saying, and to this idea of not letting love or pain kind of propel us. The longer that I stay sober, the less my tolerance for the pain is the same.
Right.
And so I find, and now I'm also constantly taking my temperature and trying to figure out where are you at right now. And I'm not afraid of talking about these things. And so I find that I'm in it more. And so I think that, and really, I think it's important to note that just not drinking or using is not enough. You've got to do the work.
God, so many questions. So I don't know if I already said this, but if anyone out there is listening and y'all want to share with us like your messiest relationship story, I would love to hear. We would love to hear it. So there were two things you said. You were saying doing the work, and so I wanted to hear more about like what is the work. The
work.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the work for me, number one, like is acknowledging like, okay, so first of all, I got to put it out there. I got to talk about what like relationships or whatever, like what's working. But then it's like doing the work for me specifically, like if I'm doing 12-step, is maybe like looking at my partner situations, acknowledging where, how to affect me and what I did wrong, and figuring out what I could have done differently. And then learning how to kind of let go of like the shame and guilt around how I showed up for that experience. So I mean, that's where the work comes. It's not having it have that hold over me. Yeah.
Bonnie Valen.
Oh yeah, I mean, just onto that as well. For me, I think, I was able to realize that like my emotions were driving me a lot, and my trauma responses were causing me to like just like make these crazy and do these things that it just didn't like make sense to me for a long time. And so I feel like that's a big part of it, is doing the work to notice what responses I've picked up and reactions I've picked up along life, and then how to kind of like begin to understand it, have vocabulary, and hopefully surround myself with people who are in a similar space, who have some sort of emotional intellect, or at least interest in exploring or coming to understand more of that stuff. So I think that's a big part. It's like it's for myself, but also getting myself in the right relations and the right settings in which to kind of like foster and nourish and really build that within me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel like we're syncing up on Violet, because what I was thinking of is like, well, then how is it that we, like, without a structure, how is it that we form ideals, right? And so you were talking about being emotionally driven, so that may have, that could have shaped sexual romantic ideals. So that's the question. It's like, without a structure, how did you form what the romantic or sexual ideal was?
Well, I feel like we did have a structure, like
We did.
whatever program you decided, whatever route you decided to go, whatever that was, because we have guidance. We have guidance in the form of sponsorship.
But before that,
yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying is like, okay, we have that structure now, but like before we had it.
I think maybe, like, I don't know about you all, but I was going on desire. I was going on desire. I don't know that I necessarily knew what I wanted or didn't want. I knew what got my nipples hard, and so I went for that. And unfortunately, that's not always a good thing, but I didn't know that at the time, and so
well, you didn't know how else to meet those needs.
So I trusted in that, and of course, because I trusted in that, and it wasn't the right thing, I found myself in more situations where they didn't last. It's like my picker was off, as to put it. I wasn't able to check my motives. I didn't know that I needed to check my motives. I just thought, maybe looking at how that it's that whole thing where we think, oh, we have to be in this kind of situation.
Right.
And what I know to be today, like I had to get to a place where I'm like, oh, you know what? I was wanting to be in a relationship because I thought I needed to be in a relationship. I didn't even see the fact that I don't have to be in a relationship as an option, so yeah.
That's so I talked about this like episodes ago, again with my therapist, but looking back, I can see now that like I was attracted to the person who made me the most anxious. Like if you made me hate myself or made me anxious, well, of course that wasn't like what I was calling it. Like I just had like, oh, I feel this uncomfortable feeling. It must mean I love you, right? Or like, oh, I feel horrible about myself. Like I'm now attached to you because I want your approval.
Did you learn that? Like, did you see that? Because we're reading in Brene Brown, and I had to like.
Here we go. Who's we? You and
my sponsor and I were reading this. No, we're reading this, and we're on that section of parenting, and the whole idea is that she was saying the question is not about asking whether or not you're a good parent, but asking, would you want your children to be the adult that you are? Are you showing your example? So if all I'm saying is examples of toxic or unhealthy situations or whatever, then obviously that's probably going to be a motivator.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's a very probing question, because the last time you asked me something like that, I started talking about my childhood. We have something coming in.
It's a messy story.
Yeah. We met. Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We met at an NA meeting on Xmas morning, and we're out hot and heavy by that afternoon. It was a drug-fueled, torrid, physically abusive year that only ended when he died. It could only have been better if he or I were fresh out of prison. That's hot.
Wow.
Thank you, Brett.
Wow.
You should slap a cover with Fabio on the front and make it and sell it.
Yeah. Wow, Brett. Jeez. Well, I'd love to hear like maybe what you learned from that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anxiety, like so you said, where did that come from? I don't know. Like, I think, I probably do. I think
if it's probing, I understand.
Yeah. I know that's like a therapy question where you have like 15 minutes to answer it. But I think maybe if I had to take a quick swing at it, I think maybe really early on, I learned that like love was conditional, you know what I mean? And that it was only when I was being punished and it was in the recovery phase of that, like when I'm trying to win my mom's love all over again, that's where I felt love. It was working so hard. So I think really early on, I equated like work and anxiety, and I romanticized and sexualized those things. Before recovery. And then I was still doing that. I think, the one thing that's different with respect to like the last, the last and probably the most toxic relationship I've ever been in was, one, I obviously was feeling all of my feelings, but the number one thing was I didn't trust my instinct, and like it kept coming up and it kept coming up and it kept coming up and I didn't trust it.
Yeah.
The big red waving flags that
Yeah.
Right. Well, and like what you were like earlier, you were talking about once you don't have those, like what's pulling you, what's propelling you, it's that. It's that like if we can get to the point where we can get rid of all of the stuff, the distractions, the things that pull us away, and we can just connect with our intuition, our higher power, our God, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But that thing that tells us, yeah, like I think that's the key is to be able to get to that space and like trust, like you said, trust that space because, it's kind of like that. I think the process is we blame everybody and then we blame ourselves for everything. And then it's kind of like, okay, we need I don't know. Then it's like figuring out what's really happening.
Mm-hmm. I love today. I went to a meeting today, and I think today's daily reflection was about blame and how in recovery we have to get rid of this idea of blame. Um, and I definitely hear the part about like getting to that quiet space. Which makes me think of, and this is probably a good segue, is like one of the things I've had to learn to get used to in recovery is that when there isn't any drama, that's a good thing. Because often I've interpreted that as like, oh, we don't connect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we aren't arguing. I don't hate you and my self-esteem is intact. This must mean
confusing drama with passion.
Yeah. Or like that anxious, unhealthy, well, just an undesirable feeling.
Right.
Okay, so we've drawn pictures about the mess. So, so I want to now go from where Bonnie Violet left us, which is when you get to that point where you're like, this shit isn't working anymore. And like, how is it once you get to that point that you start making changes? Like, what are the things that start to click? Or like, do y'all understand the question?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
What it sounds like, well, for me, because I really don't think the motivator, like I made changes because of relationships, but not because of love relationships. Like I always share, like I had reached a point where like my work relationships was shit. My personal relationships, I was in a lot of pain. My life had gotten small. And so I felt like, is that one of, they say it's like, my higher power was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself because there was nowhere else to go. I was backed into a corner. And so in that instance, I was only humbled because I ran out of options. That was from my thing.
Nowhere else to turn.
Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Okay. So then if there was nowhere else to turn, how did you decide on the next step?
It's pausing. Yeah.
I had I had support. Like I always say, like, so my higher power always had this voice in it, it was really low and I couldn't hear it. And the more like I paid attention to it, the louder that it got. And now I can hear it clearly. And I believe that it showed up for me and the people that I was surrounding myself with, because even when I was at my darkest, I still had people who I think were amazing. And the way that I know that is because I'm still pretty solid with those people now.
Yeah.
But they were doing the best that they can to offer me support without, but I couldn't hear it. It wasn't available to me. So I knew what needed to be done. I just was not in the contemplative stage of it. Yeah. And eventually I got into that stage. So it was happening. I feel like my higher power is working on me it's just, I was not ready. And then eventually when that moment was right, that window opened, I was able to climb in and take advantage of it.
Yeah. You know what I heard in all of that is like when your relationship is louder than the voice of God, you probably don't have a good relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That's really cool. Bunny Violet, were you going to say something?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing, and this is like something that was like really early in recovery that I heard a lot of that I really took a liking to, and it wasn't necessarily in this particular setting, but I think just to pause, whenever kind of doubtful. And so I think that was the big thing for me was just being able to be still long enough and be out of a relationship long enough and just be with myself more so that so I think stillness was a big tool along with an inventory to really putting myself in a place of then being able to create a set of ideals, which my ideals really came out of a response, which is so funny because when you ever hear people's like looking for somebody and they say like must have a partner that is trustful, that doesn't lie, you're like somebody lied to you, right?
Yeah.
Like those. So I think being able to like come up with ideals that are based on my experience, but also not brought from a place of like hurt or fear or whatever else might kind of push those things.
Yeah, I that's so I have this theory, like it's called like love in the negative. So normally the way I think people form relationships is like they have a bad experience and they say, okay, the next partner can't have that quality. So it's like
Mm,
they don't lie. And then another person is like, they didn't touch me enough. So this next person has to touch me. So
right.
right, like so they're forming their concept of love is based on the absence of love, right? As opposed to like having experiences that you want to replicate, like you're saying, like positive experiences where you're like,
Mhm.
hey, this is what I actually want. And that's coming from a much more different place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, you can almost kind of take a moment and be like, okay, if you did happen to have previous relationships and you're creating your ideal,
Mhm.
what were is it the things that you liked in different partners? And is that then something you can, if you will, piecemeal together
Mhm.
into, an ideal partner or an ideal relationship or situation?
Yeah. And I think that has historically been the difficult part for me is like, at least maybe not recently, but like before recovery, I would just go from one relationship to another relationship to another relationship. And I remember there was this one time in undergrad, I would, I don't know what I was thinking, but I would change my relationship status and the name on Facebook when I was in undergrad. And I did that shit like 4 times one year. And I was in a fraternity and all of my fraternity brothers started calling me out in the thread. And I was so embarrassed because I hadn't noticed, but the world was looking on and they're like, what are you doing? Like, this can't possibly be real.
Right.
Um,
And
so
there's
go
a
ahead.
comment.
Oh,
Ashley says, to what Bonnie said, I always felt like I needed, like, quote, needed a relationship when in fact I, quote, needed me. I needed to get myself right and focus on my, quote, stuff first. I've been single for 5 years and it's been a joy. I'm happy and I'm learning more about myself each day. Nice.
yeah, thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ashley,
Ashley.
which
Yeah.
is that's so great. So this was my next question, and Ashley, maybe you can chime in here, is how is it that you protect that space when you're like, you've had the pain, you've had all this discomfort, and now you're saying, okay, I need to chill for a bit. I need to see what I need for myself. So how do you protect that space? In other words, like how do you prevent yourself from like
Yeah.
muddying that by maybe running into another relationship or just doing things that compromise your clarity? Ashley, I really want to hear your answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, because I don't. I
it's
don't.
Yeah,
5 years.
it's hard. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's hard because I think it's important to have the clarity and to say no to that which you believe will not get you there. And yet I think you also have to be open to the possibility that an experience or a relationship might start in a way different than what you had thought. You know what I mean? And you could potentially, I think, miss out on a good relationship. So I think sometimes you can get so rigid to where you really don't have an openness because I don't know about you, but oftentimes I don't always know what's best for me. I often don't have the imagination or I haven't quite figured it out yet. And if I'm open enough, maybe that thing will come into my life or that person, and I'd be like, oh wait, that's kind of what I was missing, or that's kind of what I was looking for. So I think it's kind of this like, you really have to discern and have some sort of boundaries, but also maybe be willing to, take a risk.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk. It's like I feel like there's no like as much as I want to believe like I was able to hold that space, I did did the best that I could
Yeah,
with strings and, and
yeah,
tape and
yeah,
band-aids and glue, keeping it together
yeah,
and grateful that I made it to the other side. And that's it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So to the point of like feelings, I don't know if it's because of the psych meds or something else, but like I've talked about this. I have like a delayed reaction to feelings, and I never, and just in general, I don't trust them. Like I don't trust like my thoughts or my feelings all the time. But there's still like I think sometimes like we have those reactions, or I should say like my body has those reactions because they're trying to help me, either maybe it's like an overreaction, but there's still something like really protective about
Right.
it. um
Ashley did answer your question.
oh, okay. Ashley, it's not easy. It took a lot of focus. I've been distracted by the D sometimes. What do you mean by D? But I just had to make a conscious effort not to repeat past behaviors. I was tired of cycle.
Yep.
That's so interesting. And I'm waiting for your
The
definition.
other thing, no, the other thing, like,
Yeah.
what Ashley was saying is like you can be distracted by it, or you can make a mistake. But I think it's like what Bonnie talks about all the time. It's not judging. It's not judging yourself.
Right.
It's not being it's not punishing yourself for not being perfect.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
For
Well, and I
me,
think sometimes your ideal can still include some some like D from time to time that isn't like the D you're going to marry or the whatever sort of ideal that you might have. So,
Yeah, being
but it,
realistic about the D.
exactly right. Yeah.
and D for Dakota. Um, so great. So some themes there are like getting quiet, listening to like kind of what comes up in the
Getting
whisper.
clear, yeah.
Yeah, getting curious. Okay, so then with the time remaining, let's talk a little bit about what it looks like now. Like,
Mhm.
what does, like, given all of the experiences and the things we've discussed, does your romantic sexual life look better, worse? Are you still working through things? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I feel like that that it's better. Um, and part of that is like it's it's there's no activity or there's not much activity, like I've talked about before. I haven't been sexual in well over a year now. And like I made out with someone like a couple weeks ago for the first time in over a year. And so my sexuality and sexual behavior hasn't been, it's been different, very different than what it was prior to that. But I think for me, a big thing about, I guess, my sexual ideal and what I gave up on the desire. I believed that I was not capable of having my ideal relationship. And so I just pretend I didn't want it. And so a big part of me was just be able to, no, I desire to love. I desire to have romance with one or two or more people. It doesn't have to be in a certain container, but I do desire love and I do desire romance and I desire comfortability and being able to let my body be explored as it changes as a trans person. And most importantly to me, I think the most crucial thing is being able to have somebody with the emotional kind of integrity or ability to just kind of be honest with me, which is more important than, um, monogamy or, those sorts of kind of parameters. Is I just want to be able to be with somebody and for me to be able to be honest because I fell short for a long time. And, I want that person. Yeah. Like you said, it's like, I want to be that person in a relationship and I want that from the person that I'm in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And I think that I agree with Bonnie said it so eloquently. But I think for me it's definitely better in the sense that I'm no longer trying to create something that I think I should need, but more focused on what it is that I want. And so for me, I like to think of this creation of a sexual idea as a living something.
Mm,
It's that it's constantly changing because I'm figuring out more about me. Uh,
yeah.
one of the things that I my sexuality is I would like to uh, at least in any kind of relationship or connection, I want the person that I'm with to be there for me in the sense that they're into me and not just trying to get off and
Yeah.
I'm filling a void. And the way I have to do that is by making sure that I'm not doing that for that
Mm,
person. And the other thing is I always say is I want to feel dirty during and I want to feel dirty after. Meaning, and we talked about this last week. If I am not willing to walk with you on the street holding hands and be, then why am I dipping in and out of private spaces, whatever. The other thing is being okay with like I have this like for me, like I need to love me and I need to love what I'm doing and I need to respect the other individual. And so I mention all this because what I love most about how we approach this is that you can talk all you want about what you want, but are you willing to grow towards that what you want? And that's the part of my sexual idea that I focus more in on. Am I willing to become what I want?
mm.
On the nose. I love it. Yeah. So, that's really powerful, both of you. Shit. So what I'm thinking of for me is I've looked back and I've worked really hard on not having resentment. And this last year is probably, well, this last breakup was the first time in my life where I had not run to another relationship post breakup, right? It's been about a year now. And it was so difficult. And like the only thing that I could do, or like the thing that changed me the most is like I just became willing and honest around like talking about it and the feelings that came up. And that has been life changing. I'm now able to look back at the relationships that I've been in and identify qualities that I really like, right? So I know that I want a partner that's playful. I want a partner where I can feel like secure. There's like a foundation and someone who's interested in like building together. Which are probably not the things that I would talk about on the first date, counter to what we talked about during the last episode.
Let's have kids.
Yeah. I know. I was like, oh gosh, I totally misrepresented myself, but that's not here or there. And the other thing is like, I know I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who's like me entirely. You know what I mean? I want someone who maybe kind of is like me, but not like me, right? Like I'm not necessarily a very adventurous person. I'm like a creature of habit. And so like being with someone who like likes to travel and do all of those things. I say I like to travel, but like, yeah, I'm only doing it because someone is like giving me the idea.
Trying to get in the door.
So I think we're down to the last 5 minutes, huh?
We are.
Oh, 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
So what should we tell everyone?
Well, if you want to get in touch with Louie Lou or Lulu, you can reach me at LouieLou86 on the Instagram. And you know what's interesting? I actually have a second Instagram now. It's a Louis agenda. It's a long story. I'll tell you if you send me a message at Instagram. Anyway,
I love that. I'll have to check it out. And you can reach me at a queer chaplain on all of the things. I also have a website now at queerchaplain.org. Check it out. Let me know what you think. I did it myself, so you might find some bugs or have some suggestions. So I'm open to that.
Cool. And I have one Instagram.
I looked over at you
and it has one photo on it. But you can follow me on there. You can follow me on Instagram. Or you could email at what is it? Podcast at castrocountryclub.org.
Yes, and then I want you to know the Castro Country Club is a clean and sober gathering place for all people and a home for the queer recovery community. So we're located in the heart of the Castro district of San Francisco, and we endeavor to be a space where all can seek wisdom, serenity, courage, and joy. And you can find more information again at castrocountryclub.org at podcast.
And if you didn't get to like speak to us live, we would love to hear from you via our Speak Pipe. That's a link in the description. You click on it and you leave us it's kind of like a voicemail or a good old fashioned answering machine message.
Yes.
That we can then use as a prompt in a future episode.
Oh, one other thing. So we are actively recruiting interns to participate on the podcast, specifically like consumer research or marketing interns. If you're interested, you can contact us again at podcast at castrocountryclub.org and we can send you the job description.
And join us.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
And you can join us each week at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Tuesdays here where you're watching us at Castro Country Club on Facebook or YouTube.
I guess that's it.
Exactly. And just another reminder for those joining in late, we speak for ourselves. We are not ambassadors for any specific program. We just simply share what is closest to our heart when we're able to.
And most importantly, we absolutely love you and want to see you back next week.
See ya.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.